Welcome back this Monday morning. Everyone has the right to receive education in the language of their choice. That is actually enshrined in the country's constitution. But as we all know, most universities only offer subjects in English. Well, Free State University says institutions have a duty to create and develop indigenous language resources. But what exactly does that mean, and why aren't we doing it? Let's find out. I'm joined by the university's Vice-Chancellor. It's Professor Francis Petersen. Prof, good morning to you. I appreciate the time. Let me start with the question of why is English still the predominant medium at universities? Good morning.
Good morning, Gareth, and good morning to your viewers. I think it's probably also more from a practical perspective. If you've got a university of about 40,000 or 30,000 students, and you offer various degrees, then it is more practical, first of all, to offer it in particularly one language of instruction, but not to also allow other languages to be operating in different perspectives on the campus. So that's probably the major reason. The other reason that I think is also important to realize is that most of our graduates ultimately end up in the job market, in the economy, either in South Africa, on the continent, or globally. And more than 95% of our global operating market are focusing on English. So from that perspective, that is one of the reasons why English are mostly utilized as the medium of instruction.
So how do we now try and look at the changing of that particular language landscape in our country as well? What do you make of the argument and the requests and the calls for there to be more languages for more subjects? As you say, practically it might be difficult. The working world generally is in English. So where's there space, do you think, Prof, in your mind, for universities to try and adapt and some would say even customize their subjects?
Yes. So, Garrett, I don't think we should focus on English as a way of excluding students to come to our campuses. So we need to be pragmatic on the one side to ensure that we don't have a plethora of languages that are mediums of instructions. But you have to ensure that the other indigenous languages also are developed as academic languages and as intellectual languages, so that students that use that as their mother tongue have the opportunity to also interact with that. Now, from a South African's perspective, we have got a public language policy framework for public higher education that effectively put emphasis on the whole aspect of multilingualism. So I think from a compliance perspective or from a drive from government, that's probably one of the reasons why you should do that or should consider that as a higher education institution. The other one is to make sure that when we're talking about understanding difficult concepts, understanding terminology in either psychology, health sciences, theology of religion, that understanding is often driven by articulating some of those concepts in your mother tongue. Now we have, in the last couple of months, a whole debate of what's happening at school level and the challenges about comprehension. So with that argument, we then say, well, let's introduce indigenous languages in a more, I would say, the reason why we want to do it is to ensure that we create better access, we create better understanding of the concept, and therefore better success, but also utilize that to drive social cohesion, to drive inclusivity, and then start to add to the academic project, which is teaching and learning, research, and engaged scholarship.
So how do you begin practically to make a decision, Prof? Forgive me for interrupting. How do you begin to then make a decision around, I don't want to use the word the ranking of languages, but I suppose if you look at the demographics of the country, that data is available. There's been census over the years. If you look at isiZulu, 11.58 million native speakers, isiXhosa, 8.15, Afrikaans, 6.85, then English, 4.89. Then we get Sepedi, Setswana, Sesotho, Tsonga, Siswati. So how does a university, how does higher education begin to decide how much emphasis to give one language over another? There must be a data point that you need to work from.
Yeah. So just to conclude my earlier one, that's the reason why I think it's important that we have indigenous languages on our campus. But the decision to take that is often informed by the region in which your university is situated. Like, for instance, in the Free State, where we are, we've got English as the medium of instruction, but then we also have Afrikaans, the very Afrikaans-speaking area. And then we have Sesotho, and then we also have a lot of students coming from the northern part and the middle part of KwaZulu-Natal. So it's Sesotho, Afrikaans, isiZulu, and then obviously English. So that informs the decision of what sort of languages we take. But we can't just say that these are the 4 languages and you don't do anything practical. So we, for instance, would take isiZulu to find those sort of what we call glossary of terminologies in isiZulu that are important for a subject discipline. We engage with that through people that study linguistics, people that have an understanding of terminology, and various other specialists to make sure that those disciplines are understood by the indigenous language speaker in the mother tongue, and then we translate it, or we in fact talk about translanguaging, shuttling between 2 languages to be able to first understand the concept, and then secondly...
Have you seen an improvement on academic results, Prof? That's a good point you make. Have you seen an increase and an improvement in academic results for those who prefer to learn a subject in their mother tongue and then just do the exam, for example, in English? Have you seen an increase in the results? Just a last question to you.
Yeah. So, Gareth, I must say that it's not the whole subject is taught in the indigenous language. Certain aspects of understanding is in fact translated through translanguaging as a pedagogic intervention. But just to say that we have to obviously see increases from our university in terms of our success rate, but it's very hard to just ascribe it to language, because our Student Success Initiative at the university is a consolidation of various aspects, and language is a component of that. So if you ask me, does language contribute? I would definitely say yes, because it gets a better understanding of the subject content. Is that the only driver for student success? I would say no. It's a consolidation of various aspects.
Well, hopefully we start to see more and more of this. It sounds like the University of the Free State is on the right track, at least could be a good example to use for other universities and higher education institutions. Prof, always good to speak to you. Professor Francis Petersen from the University of the Free State. And very quickly, Tommy, I think it's so important that someone who doesn't understand necessarily the intricacies of English to then try and understand something at a higher education level, if it's not your language, I would imagine, is going to set you back. It has to be. So it was quite clever how UFS is doing it.
And it also speaks to foundations. You cannot get to university level not having been proficient in a language and then be expected to then excel and study in that language. But also we are part of a global society. And so it's also important that even though you may be entrenched in your own language, being able to read and understand and comprehend in your mother tongue, to be able to be just as fluent in other languages of trade, for example.
When you go out into the big wide world as well. So it's a fascinating discussion. Maybe it could be a viewer question for another day, but we're heading up to 7 o'clock.